Being live streamed as well on YouTube.
Did you see where the mute is?
Yeah, it's up on the top right.
Well, mine's on the left bottom.
Listen to it.
Mama.
I'm probably muted.
Yeah, he is.
Oh, right. Here's a mute.
It's always done to the side. Or across the
Good
top.
luck and volume.
I'm the one speaking right now.
There.
Beth, can you hear me? Hey, Jerry Beth, we're about to get started. Can you hear me? Thumbs up. Gotcha.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, folks, it's 6 o'clock. We're fixing to get started. I'm just going to give another few seconds here. Folks are still kind of walking in the door here. Good evening to everybody. I'm glad you're here.
Hey, Ryan, can you hear me? Yeah, that's you. Yeah. I wanted to, before we get started, thank you for taking over for me for the condemnation meeting. That, I think, the 11 years I've been here, I don't think I've ever done that where I completely went MIA. So I appreciate it. But I had the nasty COVID and forgot we had the meeting and did not have my phone on my person. So yes.
No worries. Everything's better in Teams. So glad I could drop in and do that.
Heard that somewhere before.
For value.
All right, Jerry Beth, I think we've got a quorum. So we're going to open up with an invocation. This evening's invocation is brought to you by Derek Smith. Derek, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
Man, I appreciate you joining us on short notice. And it's a pleasure to have you here to pray over the decisions and pray over the city, pray over tonight's meeting. So with that, again, I think people are still walking through the door, but you have the floor, Derek. And if you would, please go ahead and pray over, sir.
Hey, I appreciate y'all having me as a guest tonight. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, God, we thank you for your goodness and mercy. Lord, there's nothing like you. Father, I pray that you remind us, Lord, that your ways are higher than ours and your thoughts higher than ours. So for every person on this council and all those joining in, Lord, I pray that you bless them over and over for the time that they freely give to bless us. Lord, I pray that you give them the mind of Christ, that they would make decisions that honor you and bless those that it affects. And we thank you for peace and unity that only you can bring. And we thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And I usually say it, sorry, it's not on the agenda, but Derek is pastoring the Bridge Church, which is north of 40. So very, very thankful to have you, man.
Thank you.
All right, Jerry Beth, if you would, please go ahead and call the roll.
All right, sorry. Everybody, all parents knows what that call was. It was a call from school. Okay, Mayor.
Here.
Mrs. Stewart. Here. Mr. Richardson.
Here.
Miss Bridges.
Here.
Miss Elmore.
Here.
Mr. Biles.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Hatton.
Brother, I saw him trying to log in earlier, so I know he's made an attempt. I don't know if he's been successful or not, but
Okay. Well, I'll just, I'll hold off on him for the time being. Mr. Florence
Here.
and Mr. Butler.
Here.
All right, Mayor, we do have a quorum.
good deal. All right, guys. Again, thanks for being here this evening. Tonight's meeting is twofold. We have a somewhat of a short special session plan to get our budget approved, our final 2022 budget approved. We want to talk about ARPA real quick, and then we're going to close out the special session, and then we're going to move into a working session, which I suspect will take the majority of our conversation this evening. And I've got the fortunate privilege of introducing you to some private developers, Doug and Dave. And so I'm looking forward to getting into that. So first of all, business at hand is resolution 1-3-22. And in your packets, you probably saw it was labeled as 1-1. We fixed it though. It's actually the third resolution, the first two in the condemnation meeting last week. All right. So because we've already gone through all this discussion, we've had budget and finance meetings that were open to the public. They were held in person. And we've already had our preliminary discussions. What I did was put together just a brief summary of what's actually been included in the budget outside of known costs, like normal forecasted operating costs. And I broke it down by department, so you guys can have a second to review this. But Mr. Mike Brown is planning to kind of update the community center with an ADA lift chair for the swimming pool, some camera systems in the basketball courts and probably throughout the rest of the building. They were part of that new server payment plan, and some new flooring as well. Rordon, we're including funds to purchase and to extend the walking path to the west. That's a 1 mile strip of old railroad right-of-way that will expand our park system and give us, it also will signal to the greater Central Arkansas that we are interested in being a part of their multimodal pathway plan that's been allocated at MetroPlan. There's $55 million being set aside over the next 10 years to create a connective network of pathways throughout Central Arkansas. So it's twofold. He's also got funds in his budget for two different vehicles. One is for the park service. The other is specifically for the mosquito service. City administration, we've allocated $15,000 to seed a music and arts festival, most likely to be held in the fall this coming year. Council's already approved. We just had to move these funds over from last year to move on our depot roof renovation because we've had some water intrusion. And thanks to COVID and some supply chain issues, this project's been kind of pushed back. The third phase of that, though, however, is to get a landscape plan and to redesign that entire island around the depot to be more user friendly, to be more usable, to be kind of anchor the historic downtown part of our community, as well as 5 different city entryway signs and landmark signs to be positioned around the city so that you know when you actually get into the city limits. We have welcoming signs that tell you when you're actually coming into the city. Community development is just a software subscription, not a whole lot there. We've really kind of already funded that department in the last year, got them everything that they need to be successful. The public works, if you remember from the discussion, Jim Kelly and Tom Stivers agreed that there was a change of administration. So the best way to approach next year's budget was to basically create just a contingent account. So what you will see over the next year or so is, as the city needs to make purchases for public works, those will likely come straight to the council and be allocated. There's just not a lot of line items to be added into public works budget because everything was agreed to be put into one account, and then Thomas would make decisions on that money through the council's approval. All right, in the police department, we've allocated funds to purchase 2 Dodge Chargers. They need to be outfitted as well. And those do take time to, past ordering point. They take a few months to actually get into the city, and we've already started that process based off the preliminary budget. 8 new radios, 2 new tasers, and a new server as well. And Justin has plans to do a light remodel at the fire station to include floors, new furniture. We need to outfit that new truck of his with equipment and new graphics. And he wants a fire hydrant test kit, which I think is appropriate given the addition to all the new fire hydrants and water sewer improvements that we've made. I put capital projects down there just to kind of rehash some things that the public will see and the council can remember we've been working towards. Some of them have been delayed. Some of them are on track. We were hoping the Highway 31 overpass would get started in April next year, but the community should expect to see RDOT begin installation towards the end of this year. It might actually even move into the quarter of 2023. And with that project, we expect to see the city will have a 12-foot special use path that will be connected to that, allowing pedestrian access across the interstate, protected access across the interstate from bridge traffic. So that's going to be nice. McKinstry is still working on the solar array installation that will be installed just outside the community center the first quarter of this year. So in the next, I'm going to say 30 to 90 days, they should be breaking ground on that solar array. I think it was a few days ago, we got notice to approval to move on the sidewalk project. So that's already been awarded. We've got a contractor in place. We just have, I think we've got a few meetings left to check some boxes, and hopefully very soon, maybe within the next month to 45 days, we'll see the beginnings of the Lincoln Street sidewalk go into play. I kind of already hit about the depot restoration and the landscape plan. All that's being managed by Revival Architecture. And the water sewer upgrades are coming to a close. We've got about 4, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, okay, but we've got anywhere from 4 to 6 months remaining on this total 3.5-4 year project. That's just really, done a number on the patience of the community and really done a number on our easements. And I know people are tired, but at the end of the day, we'll turn around in a few years and hopefully forget all the trouble that was caused and remember all the good that was done through that $20 million bond, having, 80% of our city's underground utilities brand new, being our sewer lines and our water lines. And Jay Whisker will hopefully here soon be providing the city council with a master drainage study, which is coming to a close second week to the end of February. We're hoping to have something for the council's consideration. So that's a quick synopsis of what's actually been included. The council has had this and more since the beginning of, since before our last approval meeting. And there haven't really been any changes except for the jail. Initially, we had proposed a budget to the council that did not include, or that we proposed two options. The first did not include a jail, but we had a very thorough discussion on what it would mean to the community. And we have since come back to the table and considered the numbers of partially staffing, having a staffing plan that was vetted by Mr. Penix at the standards office, and that we believe would be adequate to justify the liability that we incur by holding inmates at the jail. And so we've gotten a vote of approval on this new plan, which would include one full-time jailer that would manage a lot of the work that Matt's actually having to manage right now, as well as manage 4 part-time jailing positions. This slide is actually just recommendations that came out of the budget and finance meetings that we held. I want to take a quick minute to say thanks to Jim Werdelak, Tom Klosky, Kim Catherly, and Coy Butler for giving extra time during the budget and finance discussions. So we're still looking for to appoint a treasurer. If you guys want to shake the tree or have any names, or if anybody out there that's listening thinks that they're qualified and this is a position of service that they feel called to subscribe to, then come by City Hall, because I want to sit down and talk to you. I'd love to have somebody in the treasurer position that can kind of oversee the purse strings and the annual budget, give us some backup here as well. In the meantime, you've got me and Regina vetting all this through a budget and finance process. But these are the recommendations that came out of the discussions of this year. We did meet, since we made a decision to partially fund a staffing plan for the jail and keep it open. We met to hash that out with the Budget and Finance Committee, and they were all in agreement that our plan would be good to go. At the point in time that we discussed ARPA funds, we did not know if we were going to have the capability to use federal funds to fund a police department camera system, but some things have since changed, and it looks like we will. So at a point in time that I get an opportunity to bring the ARPA proposal to the council, you can expect to see, in line with the Budget and Finance Committee's recommendations, money included to fund the police department's camera system. If you guys remember, Watch Guard was the presentation that we were given that included body cameras and 360 car cams. A reallocation of the quarter-cent tax is 50-50 currently, police and fire. And the recommendation was to just slightly move that 60 police and 40 fire. So that has been included in next year's budget. We had a pretty decent discussion on water rates and where we were in line with other cities around us when the last time we actually had a rate increase, and it's been a long time. So what we did was we initiated a water rate study, and that's currently in progress, and I'll bring that to the council as soon as I can. But from our discussions, the Budget and Finance Committee believes that it's in the best interest to increase our water and sewer rates. All right, we discussed moving county 1 cent allocation. The Budget and Finance Committee believed it would be in the best interest to keep it at 42%. So that's what we're doing. We also had another discussion about the council putting in place a resolution, a commensurate salary, with expectations that the next mayor would have full-time, would be working for the city in a full-time capacity. The advice of which was that would start in the next term after the election. And then lastly, another bit of advice was to seek higher interest rates on banking accounts. We discussed how much interest we were actually making on some of the bank accounts. It appeared to be kind of low. And so that all came out of our discussions. All right, so I think that's not even so much as a brief summary, but that's a summary of what's being proposed to the city council in the resolution 1/3/2022. And barring further discussion, which we can have, I'd like to get a motion to put resolution 1/3/2022 on the floor, please.
Mayor, I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask prior to the resolution.
Yeah,
Can you
go
hear
ahead.
me?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a concern about the budget in some areas. There are a few things that are listed as expenses that we have not discussed at length. Some of the itemized expenditures haven't been approved by the council. If we vote for the budget, does that lock in our, are we saying that we approve of all these expenditures, or will they come up before the council to be voted on at the time that they actually are put in place?
That's correct. So that's one of the reasons that we do this through a resolution, is so that it can be amended throughout the year. So just because we put money into a line account right now, you're voting to allocate that towards next year. You're not voting to spend that money right now. Does that make sense? So anything in excess of $5,000 per ordinance has to come back through the city council for approval at that point in time. Or if it's not considered to be a part of this budget, then it has to come back to the city council for y'all's approval at that point in time.
Okay.
So Mayor, Alice, are you finished?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So Mayor, I just want to verify on that point before we read the resolution. I just wanted to make a comment regarding the $50,000 that is wanting to be designated toward the walking trail. I agree with the $50,000 for the budget, but I just suggest.
Here's something to talk about.
But I suggest we hold off voting on the use of those funds until we have more time for discussions and options for those funds. Is that how it will work? That we're not voting to actually designate the $50,000 for the walking trail. You're stating that we're just right now voting to secure the $50,000 for the parks budget, but the monies will be designated and discussed at a later date. Is that what I'm understanding?
I think somewhat. So what you're voting on tonight, what the council's voting on tonight, is what I've proposed. To your point, I am proposing allocating exactly $50,000 in the parks budget to procure the 1 mile railroad right of way. Okay. So if the budget passes tonight, that money will be set aside for that purchase only. Now, at the point in time that we have a contract in place and we get ready to actually move on that deal, you will see that on the city council's agenda, and it will come back to the city council to be approved for the purchase at a later date, sometime throughout the year. And I don't have necessarily a date that I really don't plan on bringing that back to the council in February per se, but that money will be set aside for that one purchase.
Okay, so, and I'm happy to make a motion at any point, but as you know, we have taken the money that has been designated for the city park over the last 4 years. We've taken it away from the city parks. That's the city park and Wagner Park. And we have given it to the baseball park and done all the improvements out there, new concession stand, landscaping, additional funding for other items. And in fact, we even went over budget to provide for the baseball park, which we're all happy for those upgrades. We know that we needed those. But I think at this point in time, instead of continuing to take the city park's money and putting it for another purpose, I think we've got to look at that wholeheartedly and make a decision. Are we just going to keep taking it from the parks and giving it away? At what point are we going to use those funds to upgrade our parks, which we have not done anything to in many, many years? And we know that there are projects that we need to get done at both parks. And I've got a list of several of those items. So I want to make sure that the city council understands that where we need to put our money for its best use. If we were to vote for it to go to the walking trail, we've already checked that box. We've already built a walking trail that's more than sufficient for what we need. We've added the lighting, the seating, the asphalt. All those things would have to come as well for this new trail. And as I mentioned before, this trail leads us nowhere. There are additional lands that are between point A and point B to connect to anything. We have no guarantee that any landowner is going to sell us any connecting land to this trail. And the other thing is that trail, a 1 mile trail, worth $50,000? The county doesn't think so. They've got it appraised for much less. When that land was quit claimed over to the current owner, there was more than just that parcel. There were numerous parcels that were included in the sale of that, which I show came out to almost 60 acres at a value of $25,954, which, if my calculations are correct, that's under $500 an acre. I think we've got to think about our children. We have got to think about families coming into this town. Where is our money going to be better spent? When a family drives past a piece of land, or when they drive past the city parks and look at new equipment, add more handicapped equipment? We've already visited with a company about that. There are funds, there are grants that can be matched to double that money and possibly even triple that money for our parks and for our children, that these children can actually walk to these parks from any residential neighborhood in the city. So I just want us to search our hearts. Do we want to take that money from our children in the city parks and put it on a strip of a 1 mile trail? Thank you.
Thanks, Suzette. Does anybody else have any other points that they'd like to, does anybody else want the floor at this time?
I have one more question. If we vote for the budget, then that $50,000 is not just in the park budget, but it has to specifically be spent on that piece of land. Is that correct? It can't be used for some other need within the Parks Department?
No, so tonight you're voting to allocate 50,000 in the parks budget. Okay, so we'll move forward with that $50,000 earmarked specifically for the purchase of the rail trail. Okay. If at the point in time that I bring this back to the city council, if the city council votes against the expenditure, that money still remains in the parks budget and can be used in some other means. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we had a good discussion. Alice and Suzette came by my office, and we have a fundamental disagreement about the value of extending our rail trail. I do want to kind of clarify a point, is that we're not necessarily taking funds away from our children. Okay, what we're not doing is investing in slides and swings, but this is a move to invest in expanding our park space to then be expanded on later. And she's, Suzette's right. There are challenges to getting connected to North Little Rock, but we have regional partners as well who have, who are working to design, to create a regional multimodal pathway. So, it's not no for now, but not forever type of approach. To me, the priority, of course, I'm not anti-slides, I'm not anti-swings. I'd love to see a gigantic jungle gym in every park. We have a limited amount of funds, and this project is going to transpire over the course of the next decade. Now, to me, the ability to ride a bicycle to work to and from Remington every morning, that's a pretty neat concept to me. The ability to host cycling traffic from Memphis to Little Rock. There's an economic impact to being able to being a connector, and not just a pass-through city, but being a destination city, so that folks in West Little Rock can get onto this multimodal pathway, near Chenal or in Cabot or wherever, and can actually find their ways into Lone Oak all through this rail trail. Now, we only have influence over so much space, and extending this rail trail out to the west is as much influence as we physically as a city council and financially have control over. Other than that, all I have is influence at the Metro Plan Board and when this discussion comes up. And so anyways, that's my platform. I'm not here to beat the drum on the rail trail. Obviously, I'm proposing it. I'm asking for the city council support in that purchase when we get to that point. But to Suzette and Alice's point tonight, that we have plenty of room left for more discussion amongst council members before we bring the purchase request to the council.
And this is Gibb. I'd like to say one thing real quick.
Yes, sir.
So I'm in favor of the expansion, and not so much on the grand scheme of things of connecting with Little Rock or Remington or whatever, but I'm anxious to get to the working group session and hear what the plans are for the Lucas property. But I would venture to say that if the Lucas property was developed now, we wouldn't have stopped at Highway 89 with our walking trail. I think we need to go another mile, so the people that live at Mallard Point Estates and the future development will be able to ride their bike to the baseball park or get into town. So that's just something to consider, and we can talk about it later when we vote, but I'm in favor of it.
Well, and can I interject something on that, Gibb? So I know you had mentioned that earlier, and I'm thinking, how many parents that live at Mallard Point, and you've got to remember, we're in this city to support every parent in this town, not just the ones at Mallard Point, but how many of those parents that live out there would let their child walk or ride a bicycle from their house down that existing trail and a new additional trail that the mayor is proposing to the ballpark, because you still have to cross Highway 70. And I don't know about you, but I would never let my child nor my grandchild walk across Highway 70 to get to the ballpark, nor ride their bicycle on such a dangerous road. So I don't know if you've taken that into consideration, but I think obviously that's something we would want to think about.
But you might ride with them. And I've seen at least one family from out there, and I'm very close to about 3 other families out there, but at least one family already rides their bike as a family into town. So anyway, I don't want to belabor it anymore. So I appreciate your perspective. I just have a different one.
Any other points from the council? If not, I'm waiting. Yes, ma'am.
I'm
I
sorry.
have one point. We have made improvements to the park in the last few years. We have new handicap equipment at the city park and improvements on the tennis court.
Hey, Mara.
I know we did add a part to the handicapped, and Roy Don, are you on here that you can tell us what's been added?
Yes, ma'am. The handicap, we built 2 handicap playgrounds. The swings, 3 swings on each one. I believe a wheelchair swing and 2 additional swings. With the fall zone, with the rubbery fall zone, each one of them was a total of about $40,000 a piece. Then we resurfaced the tennis court, which cost us, if I'm not mistaken, I believe around $16,000 to $17,000. And
when was that, Roy Don? When did we do those improvements?
Well, the last, we done 2 playgrounds. One year we done 1 playground, the other one done the next. That was 5 and 4 years ago.
Okay.
And then resurfacing the tennis court was probably 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay, so there again, I want to say for the last 4 years, we have not done any improvement, and it reflects on our budgets that I've looked at over the past years. So, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure that if we vote to go with this budget for 2022, where we are locking in those city park funds once again to be designated for the rail trail, and not for the city parks. Is that correct?
That is correct. But at the point in time that I come back and ask the city council to spend that 50,000 explicitly on what we've allocated it for, then the city council at that point in time will have a decision to vote against it and reallocate those funds, or to vote for it and move forward on the procurement of that right of way.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear you say. So we do have the
We're not,
option
we're
of
not buying
re-
we're not buying any property tonight. We're getting approval by the city council to move forward on the budget that has 50,000 allocated for the purchase at a later date.
but it can be changed to allocate to purchase items for the city park.
Any line, not just 50,000, any line item that we have allocated, those trucks that I talked about, one for the mosquitoes and one for the parks, anything that's in the budget can at a later date be reallocated to an amendment of a resolution. Right.
Okay, thank you. Yes, that's what I needed clarification on. Thank you.
Hey, Trey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, sir.
I'm like Ms. Elmo. What's the big rush on moving it? I mean, when we don't have to do it right now. I mean, why would we go and come when we just can go and do it at one time? I mean, I don't see the big rush in moving it right now. I mean, if you can verify that, let me know.
Yes, sir.
Verify it.
All right. If I could, I'd like to get a motion to put the resolution on the floor.
Motion.
So
Second, Coy Butler.
Thank you, Coy. I got a motion by Michael Florence and seconded by Coy Butler to put resolution 13/2022 on the floor. Ginger?
Resolution 1-3-2022, a resolution providing for the adoption of a budget for the city of Lone Oak, Arkansas for the 12 months beginning January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2022, appropriating money for each item of expenditure therein provided for, declaring an emergency and for other purposes. Whereas the city council has made a comprehensive study and review of the proposed budget submitted by the mayor, and whereas it is the finding and conclusion of the city council that the schedules and exhibits of anticipated revenues and expenditures for the calendar year appear to be as accurate as possible for budgetary purposes. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of Lone Oak, Arkansas, Section 1, this resolution shall be known as the budget resolution for the city of Lone Oak, Arkansas for the 12-month period beginning January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2022. The attached budget incorporated herein is a step out word for word and figure for figure reflects the estimate of revenues and expenditures as set forth on the succeeding pages. Section 2, the respective funds for each item of expenditure proposed in the budget for 2022 are hereby approved and adopted for the operation of the city of Lone Oak, Arkansas by the city council on this date and constitute an appropriation of funds which are lawfully applicable to the items contained within the budget. This budget may be altered or revised by action of this governing body, and unpledged funds may be subsequently appropriated to another purpose except as prohibited by the law in Arkansas Code Annotated Section 14-58-203B. Section 3, the mayor or his duly authorized representative may approve for payment out of funds appropriated by this budget or otherwise approved by the city council for these purposes, or may disapprove any bills, debts, or liabilities asserted as claims against the city up to a maximum amount allowed by Arkansas law, and the payment or disapproval of any bills, debts, or liabilities exceeding that amount shall require the confirmation of this governing body. Provided, however, that the execution of all contracts and conveyances and lease contracts shall be performed by the mayor and city clerk when authorized by a resolution in writing and approved by a majority vote of the city council present and participating. Section 4, if any provision of this resolution or the application thereof to any person or circumstance is held invalid, such invalidity shall not affect other provisions or applications of the resolution, which can be given effect without the invalid provision or application. And to this end, the provisions of this resolution are declared to be severable. Section 5, whereas the efficient operation of municipal government requires that a budget be planned and adopted by the governing body, and that without a budget, the city may not pay its bills, debts, or liabilities. Now, therefore, an emergency is hereby declared to exist, and this resolution being necessary for the preservation of the public peace, health, and safety shall take effect and be in force from and after its passage and approval.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much. All right, at the risk of extending the conversation, I always want to make sure everybody has their piece said. Are there any further points of discussion on the budget before I ask for a vote?
Yeah, I didn't get a good understanding of it. He was quick talking.
Okay. Any further points? All right, well, don't forget to come off of mute. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, resolution 13/2022 passes.
Mass, I'm so sorry. Are we not, don't we need to make a motion to accept the first reading and accept the second? Or what?
You're talking about
No,
ordinance?
this is a
Resolution.
resolution, not an ordinance. So just the one reading sufficient.
Okay, so we don't have to have a motion to accept the readings at all.
Well, we did. We just did that. We just had a motion to accept the first reading.
Okay,
Basically the first and only reading.
right. So, but there wasn't a specific person that did that.
Yeah, you're correct, Jerry Beth. To your point, we had a motion, second to put it on the floor. So procedurally, Ginger, if you want to go back and get a motion to accept it, that's fine. I don't think it's a requirement. I think the spirit and intent was honored clearly. I didn't ask for a motion to accept the first reading, but that's obviously what we all voted on. I'm happy to ask the council to give me a motion to accept the first reading.
So moved, Brian.
Second, Ephraim.
Thanks, Ephraim. All right, there was a motion to accept the first reading by Ryan Biles and seconded by Ephraim Jones. I'll ask it this way. Is there any opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. All right, moving down to the second item, guys, is about ARPA funds. So you guys recall the city of Lonoc was allocated $860,000 as a part of the American Rescue Protection Act, I believe is what ARPA stands for. Months back, there were 5 categories of which we could spend a portion of that money. This has been a very complicated and drawn out process. I can tell you, Regina has had to go to more school that she cares to go to learn how to keep us on the up and up with what we spend this money on. But of the 5 buckets, really only had one that we could justify spending money on, and that was premium pay for our employees. So before Christmas, all of our full-time employees received a pretty healthy sum in premium pay bonus money. That was about $300,000 package. Investing in our workforce and showing those who stayed with us through COVID in the last 2 years how much we appreciate them. And I'm grateful to the council for that. Because of that, we have about $560,000 remaining in our ARPA account. In the last few weeks, there have been some loosened restrictions on what we can and cannot spend, and our discretion has gotten more broad. And because of that, I will be bringing a proposal to the council sometime throughout this year on how we allocate that remaining $560,000. What I'd like to ask the council tonight is for permission to release an RFP, a request for procurement to get grant writing services specifically to manage the federal funds, to manage this $560,000 that we've got to spend. Regina is, to say the least, operating at maximum capacity, and to be able to oversee the expenditure of these funds is just even that much more workload on her. And so I agree with her. And this would be in the best interest of the city and in the city administration if we could find somebody, a professional grants writer, to apply, and we could select someone who could manage the remaining funds for us. So that's what I'm asking the city council to do tonight, is to release an RFP for grant services.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question, please.
Yes, sir.
This is a request for proposal or a request for qualifications? And perhaps Ginger could enlighten us in terms of procurement if there is a particular protocol here. In other words, are we asking for quotes, or are we asking for qualifications to be evaluated as it's a professional service?
We were told we had to do an RFP, a request for proposals. There are fees involved. They can charge us for the services. So you're basically getting qualifications and fees all in one package.
And what are our guidelines for procurement then? For like, what if we had a qualified person whose fees were higher and a less qualified person whose fees were
Well,
lower?
You have to follow the federal guidelines.
That's my question. What is that? What is that?
There
guideline?
will be a scale. The procurement package includes like a grading scale type thing.
Okay.
So
Is that something that internally administration then will grade, or do we have someone we could outsource the grading to?
yeah,
At municipal league or something like that?
Municipal League is the one who gave us the package. They didn't tell us they would grade it for us, but they gave us the documents to use. So.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question. Is that something that CAPDD or possibly Alyssa, who we've got her on board as far as I think doing a part of our grant writing, is that something that would not be under their job description or qualifications to do?
CAPDD is qualified. They are all well-versed in federal regulations, which is what's required of any federal grant monies. But we have to procure this service. We can't just say we want you to do it. That's not the way that this federal money works. Anything that has to do with it has to be procured.
And this is not something that I would put on Alyssa's shoulders. Now, I don't think she has, if any, much experience managing federal funds, but most of the stuff that she's helping us with are state level or nonprofit level. This is a little bit more sensitive in scope and size, I would say.
So Regina, to clarify,
These funds are going to require a federal compliance audit, of which I've never been through one. CAPDD's done a lot of them and probably many other grant writers, but I wouldn't even know how to prepare for something like that.
so to clarify, CAPDD is an example of a qualified applicant for.
That's correct.
Who would potentially be responding to this.
Yes, they are, and they are actually doing several cities around us in our area.
So if they submitted their proposal, do we currently pay CAPDD when they find a grant and help us apply for it?
Yes, ma'am. If the grant is awarded, we have administrative service contract and they charge us a fee. Like the special use path that we're working on at the next council meeting, the services fee will be presented for that.
Okay. Regina, is that like a percentage of the grant? I think
Yes,
I've heard.
ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Well, sorry, one more question. So is that a standard percentage? I mean, is it a locked in percentage or does that percentage change according to the grant?
I think it works off of a sliding scale. It probably, I don't know this to be a fact, but federal grants require a lot more work than some state and local grants. So, but normally I think it's based on a percentage of the grant awarded.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just one more point, if it's okay. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to say this, but I want to make a note of thanks to Regina for the inordinate amount of work that she's had to do during these times. Really, it's been for a long time, but I just want to express my gratitude. And I don't know how many people realize there's a ton of expertise and she's very good at doing what she does. So I want to just express that.
Always an appropriate time to pat somebody on the back, Ryan. And she's well deserved for sure. All right. Any further discussion? If not, I'm looking for council's approval. So I need a motion.
Mayor, I have one question. You did say the amount was $560,000 that was left, correct?
I did, but I'm also summarizing. So we had 860 allocated plus some change. I'm sure Regina has a document somewhere that can give you to the dollar bill, but yeah, that's a summary, Jerry Beth. So for those listening, don't take that out of context. We've got approximately 560 remaining to be allocated.
But we haven't gotten the second tranche yet.
Yeah.
So we don't have an exact number. We know what we think we're getting.
Is there anybody on the council willing to make a motion?
So moved, Coy Butler.
Second, Ephraim.
Thank you, guys. Motion's by Coy Butler, and I got a second by Ephraim Jones. Any other points to be made? Don't forget to come off of mute, please. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, any announcements from the council? We are fixing to close out. And I want to just, again, thanks to everybody on the Budget Finance Committee. And thank you guys again for passing the budget this year. I'm not going to beat that horse anymore. We are getting ready to close out of the session.
Mr. Mayor.
And we are moving into, yes.
I apologize. Yes, for a quick announcement, and I promise I'll be quick. But I just wanted to, sorry, I don't want to be repetitive, but want to thank my colleagues on City Council. Just this past week, I had an opportunity to attend the first of several sessions this year for the Delta Regional Authorities, Delta Leadership Institute Executive Academy. It was a process that I've been admitted to after was not admitted last year. I was admitted this year, and we're going to be meeting in several locations around the Delta throughout the year and graduate from the academy in Memphis in September. And just so y'all know, A, thank you for supporting me. I'm very grateful. And B, Lone Oak's reputation in the region is very good. And in many cases, people at the state and even the federal level are pointing to our community as an example of a small town who's doing things well. So I just wanted to give credit to y'all. It's very gratifying to walk into rooms where our reputation precedes us, and it's a good one. And so remember that y'all have all been responsible for that, and we have a great volunteer corps of folks here in Lone Oak doing that. But it's an honor. It's really humbling to represent our community in places like these where important discussions are being had. So just wanted to let y'all know, and I'll keep y'all up to date throughout the year. We were in Selma, Alabama this week, and it was very historically significant place, and a lot of sobering moments and a lot of good opportunities to discuss issues that are important to communities that are rural and dealing with a lot of things. And again, Lone Oak stands out, and I want to thank y'all for that.
Thank you, Ryan. Anything else?
Thanks, Ryan.
Hey, Mayor, let me say it say this right quick. After all the ice and snow come through, and Saturday, if any of the council members are not too busy and want to get out and just have some fun, I'm having a birthday party, which will be my 60th, Saturday at 7 o'clock over at Studio J. Colors are green and gold, but you come as you are. We'd love to see some of you guys there.
All right, then. Thanks, Evan. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Coy Butler.
Second, Al.
Any opposed? All right, session's closed. Normally we take a quick break, but we are not going to take a quick break. We're going to roll right into our working session, which I think the majority of our audience probably is here this evening. So let's get into it, guys. We're here tonight. Basically, the purpose of our working sessions are for the public's edification, informal charrettes or discussions about projects or opportunities that the city is faced with. And the purpose of tonight's working session is really to introduce the city council members and the public at large to a group of private developers who came knocking on our door and said, hey, just like Ryan said, your reputation precedes you guys. We like what we see. I think there's opportunity here. But instead of blazing our own path, we'd like to sit down with you, Mayor. We'd like to sit down with Gene Eagle, and we'd really like to introduce ourselves to the city council. And we'd like to let folks know what we're doing and get consensus. And so that starts tonight is getting feedback and building consensus on some really, I think, great opportunity that it's knocking on our door right now. And so that's what we're going to learn a little bit about tonight. I'm not going to deep dive into who Doug and Dave are. I'm gonna let them do that. I still want to give a little bit of time for Gene to introduce and to speak to this project. There's three things I want to leave you with. I want to leave you with what the general plan is. Every city has a charter. A charter is essentially a summary of the will of the people and summarizes growth patterns and focus points, goals, objectives, and things. And we have a general plan that was adopted by the city council. Many of you in here tonight are by named on that document. And our general plan absolutely supports a plan of growth on the, and actually by name, it's a 1,000-acre development site to the northwest of our property. As a matter of fact, the chapter 4 of the plan is goals and strategies. It talks about the first point in the goals and strategy chapter is fixing the basics. And I think the city council, city administration has done it. And even to Wayne McGee's credit, the prior administration, the prior council members, I think they did a great job recognizing our need for our water and our sewer. And we're working on those basics, building on the assets, creating neighborhoods of choice, building family wealth, and influencing community growth. And to building on assets, I'd have to say that we've worked really, really hard to use our downtown as a stage and as a platform and to encourage growth and attention in our downtown. Lone Oak's a walkable community. We're broken up on a grid. Not everybody can say that. Cabot's not on a grid. Jacksonville's not on a grid. We are, and it's a very, very strong asset of ours. It makes us a walkable community. It's one of the reasons that our kids can get to and from school walking or on bikes safely. And so we don't have exactly a master sidewalk plan, but to that point, we are working and we have started putting money into our sidewalks. And I'd say too, the council has done a good job supporting our school district. That's one of our huge assets is our schools and our teachers. And just knowing that we've had y'all's support and the city has supported the expansion of the academy. That's been huge. To creating neighborhoods of choice, building family wealth. I think our condemnation process speaks to that. The ability to hold, derelict property owners accountable, remove old properties and make way for new infill. That's going to pay off in the next 5 or 7 years as we start catching the attention of other developers and they start coming in and saying, well, I like this pad, I think you're going to start seeing more and more building permits pulled. We've invested in Mallard Point with that drainage plan. We put $30,000 or $40,000 into ourselves and went out there and made sure that newer development that we have drains. And that was something that we worked through that we worked through the city council 2 years ago. Influencing community growth, guys, that to me falls into the purview of the planning commission. And through help with our partners at Metro Plan, our planning commission, and having Jimmy Von Tunglen on staff, guiding policy and influencing how we build, strategically how we build in the permit process, bringing Jeremy on board, allocating somebody who can actually devote 100% of their attention to how we build has been, well, it's telling of how we're influencing our community growth. So that's all wrapped up in chapter 4, but to the point that we're discussed tonight is chapter 5. It talks about plan elements. What do we do with our downtown? What's our transportation system going to look like? What's urban growth? Gateways and beautifications. In there, 5.7 talks about economic development. And under economic development, we've hired a full, not even a full-time, we've contracted economic development services through Gene Eagle. And just like Regina, I can tell you right now, there's so much time, effort, and conversation that goes into what he's been doing in furtherance of representing the city of Lone Oak and its industrial development vision. To keeping that feather in the air, it takes time, it takes commitment. And so I can't be more thankful that a council realized that and that we've made a decision to put somebody like Gene on staff who's putting spotlights on these opportunities for us and keeping the city's best economic development interests at heart. All right, so I've kind of beat up the general plan. I'm not going to go into all the levels that I had really planned tonight, but I want the public to know, I want the council to know that this opportunity that we have before us is 110% supported by what is actually drafted and approved in our general plan. Secondly, I want to highlight the 17.5% sales tax that, or it's a 1 cent sales tax, 17.5% of which has been going into an economic development fund since, help me out, Michael, 1993, 94, something like that. Almost 20 years of accumulated growth and is built right now to about $1.6 million. Now, there's some very particular language as to how that money can be spent. It was voted on by the public. And there's 4 points of direction there. The money can be used through the city council's approval to purchase an industrial site. Okay. It can be used to provide services to that site, services being water, gas, sewer, road systems. It can be used to provide advertising and promotion, and it can be used to promote jobs and growth. All right. So with that, that is our job as city officials is to seek opportunity to reinvest in ourselves, to reinvest in infrastructure, to reinvest in industry and industrial development. And that's kind of the story I've got. That's the lead in I've got for you. And so I'm excited tonight to be here. First of all, again, I can't say how cool and humble it is that we've got private development that wants to partner, that wants to include us and be inclusive in their strategy. So, Gene, I don't want to rattle on. I'm gonna give you the floor for just a second, and then I would ask you to be as concise as possible, because I want to give Doug and Dave as much time as the council would like to give their story and talk as well.
Absolutely, Mayor. Thank you. I won't spend much time at all. I just wanted to let the council know that we've continued to pursue opportunities on some projects. And that's really where my focus has been, is just to try to keep us competitive and providing information, anything I can get my hands on that they need to be successful. And with that, I'd like to let's take the time to introduce these gentlemen, Doug Meyer and Dave Burning with Terraforma. And so I'm going to turn it over to them, and there may be opportunities where I could jump in and make a comment or two, but I really think this is up to them. They've come down here and given their time this evening to spend some time to let their vision be known now to the citizens of Lone Oak and to the city council. So with that, Doug and Dave.
Well, thank you, Gene, and thank you, Mayor. We greatly.
Hey, Doug, can you hear me?
Okay.
There you go. You're back on.
Well, first I want to greatly appreciate the opportunity to address the mayor and the members of the council and any other members of the city. I want to tell you just a little bit about Terraforma. My partner Dave and I, we started the company 25 years ago, and we've taken great pride in always trying to find middle ground, and we call it just a win-win situation. Over the last 25 years, we've leased property, we've developed it from ground up, and we've negotiated projects. And just an example of some of the ones we've done, we built the auto dealership in North Little Rock. We negotiated a sale with Buffalo Wild Wings. You can just slip down through there. We did some with Heritage College. We built a retail strip center. We built a building and leased it for Sears, which was National Tire and Battery, a Big Red convenience store. And if we could go to the next slide, please. So I just want to highlight just a couple of the projects we've done in the last 5 or 6 years. This, many of you might remember at 3rd and Main and Little Rock, Bennett's Military Supplies. It was been there for 146 years. Well, we purchased the building from the family. They went out of business, and this building literally was falling down. We worked with the state and the federal government on a historic rehab. We used the credits, and we did a $4 million renovation. It's just unbelievable how beautiful this facility is on the inside, and we actually won a state award for one of the best rehab projects in the state. It's currently leased to CGRW, which is the largest advertising company in the state of Arkansas. Next one, please. So right after we did this project, we went across the street, and there was a building that could not be rehabbed. So we on 301 Main, we did a new 4-story. And most of you probably know Axiom. So we leased 2 floors to Live Ramp, which is an offshoot of Axiom. On the top floor, it's Dine Entertainment, which is the largest franchisee for tropical smoothie cafes in the United States. Next slide, please. So Dave, what, 15, 20 years ago in Sherwood. If you see on the bottom, there's a meandering creek that goes through there. All of the houses to the left of your screen, you can't see them, but they all used to flood. So we wanted to build this new housing project it's approximately 45 all brick homes, very nice. They're all average, probably $250,000 to $350,000. But we didn't want anyone to flood. So we went to the Corps of Engineers and got a 404 permit, and we channelized this creek. And we had a series of meetings with city, with the state, and with the federal Corps of Engineers. We had one meeting where 100 and some people showed up. And the reason I bring this up is we talk about a win-win situation. When we got the 404 permit to channelize this creek, it eliminated the flooding of all these people upriver. So it truly was a win-win situation. If you noticed on the right, there's a car dealership. That's the one I told you, it's a Hyundai dealership that we built. And right above it is a Buffalo Wild Wings. Part of the reason we wanted to show you this slide is we try to do a win-win. So we've got retail restaurant, we've got a commercial building, and we've got beautiful homes. And you see the trees that buffer in between it. So the mayor, it was just a very, very satisfying project. So our latest project, we just finished, what, a year ago? Right at a year ago, is in North Little Rock on the banks of the Arkansas River. And this is a picture, it's called The View. It's a multifamily apartment complex, 244 units. It is A quality, beautiful interior, pool. It's a smart community where it has, you don't even have to use a key anymore. You can use your phone to change the heat and cooling, to open the door. It was well received. The mayor actually helped us with this. And there was a little something different about this project. It's in an opportunity zone, and most of you probably know an opportunity zone, but it's a federal project where the government said, okay, we're going to go to lower income areas. And if a builder builds there and creates job and creates revenue and creates value for the area, then there's tax advantages down the road. So on this particular case, we got the mayor, we got the governor, and actually the federal government, and we got this approved as an opportunity zone. And it truly, as you can see, it's a beautiful project. We're very proud of it. Next one. So this is Denver, Colorado. This is just an open field, farm ground, which looks almost exactly like if you were at the corner of 89 and I-40, the Lucas farm. And this was taken about 3 years ago. Go to the next slide, please. This is what it looks like today. So there's a phenomenon going on right now with Amazon and buyers in general, and it's called just in time. Used to, you'd go on Sears or Montgomery Wards and you'd order something and it'd show up maybe to a retail store near you a week or two later. Now, if you're Amazon Prime and you order something, if you don't get it and by the next day, you're calling going, what happened to my order? So consequently, what's happened is all of the large companies are putting in distribution / warehouses on a regional basis so that when you order something, you can get it literally the same day, if not the next day. So let's move on to the next one. Dave, jump in here whenever you want.
I might interject here.
Are you on mute or off?
Oh, yeah, okay. I might interject here that right now to talk a little bit more about today's environment. With Amazon coming to the Central Arkansas area the way they have, there is an unprecedented amount of opportunities for these major companies coming into town looking for the types of facilities that Doug alluded to. We've never seen this in my lifetime like this, and I don't know how long this will last, but we certainly have an opportunity right now here in Lone Oak on the Lucas Farm to take advantage of some of that, if we can get certain things to fall into place. But I just want to point out that this may not be forever. At some point, this will fill up. We just learned, and I think you've probably seen in the paper, where TSC Tractor Supply just announced opening a facility in Maumelle, and we were in contention for that initially, but we fell out. There are two others that we're in contention for right now, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. But I did want to point out that this is really an opportune time. If we're really serious about trying to do an industrial park and attack this type of thing, this is the time to do it.
One of the great things about these warehouse developments is clean. It's a very clean industry. There's almost literally no pollution. And you might say, well, what does Denver have to do with Lone Oak? But I'm going to give you some examples of other cities that stepped up and did similar type projects. Here's one in Virginia, population 16,000. Go to the next one, please. Hazleton, Pennsylvania, 25,000. Next, please. Wixom, Michigan. And you might have noticed the last couple were by Flint Development, which is one of the companies we're going to talk about in just a minute. Go to the next slide, please. Like Dave just alluded to, Tractor Supply just announced a 900,000 square foot center, just like the pictures we just saw. 450 jobs by the end of next year, and $100 million project that's added to the property tax base of the city of Maumelle. They've also said, there's a window of opportunity here. 3 years ago, these were unheard of around here. When Amazon announced that they were going to build a distribution center here, it put Central Arkansas not just on a state map, not just a regional map, it put Central Arkansas on a national map. And we've got some opportunities that 3 years ago wouldn't have been there, and 3 or 4 years from now might not be here. But right now, this is a very red hot process that's going on. The next one. So here's a conceptual lot plan of the Lucas Farm. So the far left one is under contract. It's not under contract. We have a LOI. That's a letter of intent from a national firm called Becknell Industries. And we have a meeting with them tomorrow, hopefully to go to a contract. And once they go to contract, then typically you have 120 to 180 days due diligence. And we'll discuss utilities. We'll discuss infrastructure. We'll discuss price. We'll discuss a lot of different things. I guess can we say,
yeah.
So the Becknell, what a lot of these companies do is Becknell builds, this is going to be 1,200,000 square foot facility. And it will be for Lowe's. I'm sure everyone knows who Lowe's is. So we are competing with the site at Galloway where Amazon went. So we have competition. So, we just talked to them prior to this meeting and said, what is Lone Oak's chance of getting this? And they said 50-50. So we're working hard, really hard to get this. And then if you go a little further right, there's another one. We have another LOI, and we just received a contract on it today, 215 acres, that they would build a purely speculative building of 500,000 square foot followed by another 1,000,000 square foot and potentially another 1,000,000 square foot. Now, these jobs are, starting pay $20 an hour and up. When we talked to Becknell with Lowe's, they said the average pay, including benefits, was in the $30 to $35 range. I don't care if you're Little Rock or Northwest Arkansas, those are good wages. These are good jobs. One of the beauties of this is you can imagine spending millions of dollars on this facility. These companies like Lowe's are signing long-term leases, like 15 years or 20 years. And one of the great things of this is these are regional facilities. Lowe's is only doing 7 of these in the entire United States. So this isn't just for the state of Arkansas. Let's go to the next one, please. Next slide.
I'm sorry, I was now from mute. Doug, would you mind just quickly explaining what a spec building or a spec project is for everybody that may not know?
Hang on. I'm sorry. I'm going to turn this up just a little. Could you go again? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. I was wondering, could you just, would you mind explaining to those who may not know what you say spec building or spec project? What does that mean?
So the one we mentioned first, Becknell, they are building a facility. It's called build to lease. So they are building 1,200,000 square foot buildings, either here or North Little Rock, for Lowe's, and Lowe's will lease that building for 15 or 20 years. Another company out of Kansas City that we'll talk about in a minute, they want to buy 215 acres and build a building purely on speculation. So they have no national client whatsoever, but they know about this potential Lowe's deal. They know about Little Rock, North Little Rock, Momel, all competing for these. And all of a sudden now this site in Lone Oak has popped up on a national map. So they're willing, assuming we work through a lot of issues with infrastructure and utilities, they're willing to build a 500,000 square foot facility with no one to lease it to. Now that's faith right there. That answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you. And again, this is informal. So if anybody has questions, I don't want to interrupt the presentation, but
yeah, please.
It's for information here. So, all right, next slide, you said?
Please.
Yes, sir. So I overlaid this so you guys can see what our current zoning, how our city is currently zoned. The gray being all industrial, the orange is commercial, and the yellow is currently residential. I believe it's R1.
So the warehouse fits perfectly in this zoning, and that's usually a big holdup for big companies to do this. So once again, Lone Oak is ideally situated. The site is ideally situated for this type of use. Next, please. So talked a little bit about infrastructure. The top green line that goes from 89, it would go parallel along the south side of Interstate 40 and would connect what would be 3 lots across there, one being 215 acres, another one being 160, and another one being 145. And one of the reasons we wanted to show you this is it also shows conceptual for one of the 2 or 3 entrances on the southeast corner down there where Mallard Point Cove is. As we mentioned earlier, and we showed you, we've done single family homes, we've done multifamily, and if these commercial projects, if these industrial projects come to fruition, we're talking hundreds of new jobs. So these people are going to have a place to live. So we've kind of laid out just very, very conceptual combination of some single family and some multifamily with some possible little green lines there showing some possible new drives coming in. I think the one drive comes in off of, is it 3rd Street there, Mayor? 3rd Street?
Right there by the cemetery and MFA is 3rd Street. Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's go to the next one, please. So the first company, the 145 acres, Becknell, they own properties in 32 states, 195 properties, 34 million square feet. And look at the list of the companies that they do business with. So I think pretty much everyone would recognize most of those companies, but probably everyone would be proud to have one of those at the front door of your city.
Before you change slides, I might point out today when we were coming over here, we did talk with the executive vice president at Becknell, and he is interested in additional property already. Whether they get the Lowe's deal or not, they still like the site. That he wants to continue to have conversations, bring other companies like these listed below to the site to see if it makes sense for them to come here. So we're strategically located for a lot of this type of development. I mean, we can get some things put in place that we need.
And we're learning a lot. So if you would go to the next slide. So this is another company, Flint Development. This is the one for 215 acres. And in both of these companies, they're doing this nationwide. They ask a lot of questions. One of the first things they always ask about is infrastructure, roads, utilities, gas, electric, all that kind of stuff. And so this Flint Development, they've done millions of square foot, but right now they have 5.5 million square foot under construction across the United States. So we felt very fortunate to hook up with this company. They're very aggressive and very responsive. They'll ask us a question, we get back to them, and there's going to be tons of questions we still have to answer. But we feel fortunate that we've got both of these we're working with. And we actually got a contract with this company today based on meeting certain objectives. Next slide. So most importantly, everyone wants to know, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for the city? Probably the largest impact is to the tax base and property tax. There's generally not a lot of sales tax, little if any, associated with warehouse distribution, because basically it's product going in, product going out. But these facilities, the first one is 70 million, 80 million, $80 million project. So just imagine what that does to your property tax, and we'll show that slide here in just a minute. But these property taxes, they go for classroom, they go for teacher salaries, police, fire department. It's funny, it's good timing when you're just passing a budget, money's tight everywhere. It's not often you get potential to have a huge influx of new tax into the budget. And this can go for parks and rec. It can go for street lights, sidewalks. From a community standpoint, you have increased property values and access to higher paying jobs. Next slide, please. We did? I'm sorry. So I look, Lonoc is 0.58% on property tax. I think Maumelle is 6.62 or 6.3. So Lonoc is they're very competitive on property tax, which is a good thing, because these huge companies, if they're spending 70, 80, $100 million, 3 or 4 percent, or even base points, make a huge difference, which we'll show you in just a minute. Next slide. So if any of you get a chance, look look up Edgerton, Kansas. And we talk about Lonoke, but Edgerton, Kansas is a population 1,784 people. And the city got together, community leaders, and they had a unique opportunity where they had a rail spur, and Kubota, most of you know Kubota Tractor, came to them and said, we want to have a distribution center here, but we need a road, we need gas, sewer, that kind of stuff. And Edgerton said, yep, we'll do it. So since 2012, they've created thousands of jobs, 100 million increase in annual payroll. That's just unbelievable. 9% increase in the number of businesses, 56% increase in home values and sale prices. And so, you know, let's just talk about that a minute. You know, if let's say your house is 200,000 and it increases 50%, so your house goes from 200,000 to potentially worth 300,000, you go, well, but my property tax will go up. That's true. You know, it might go up $100 or $200 a year, but I think I'd rather have a house go up in value $100,000 and pay a little bit more in property tax. One of the things it talks about is that people are moving from the lower income brackets to higher income brackets. They had extra money to improve their schools, and lo and behold, they had increased high school graduation rate. Every community would love. Next slide. Did you go to there, Mayor? There you go. So I showed this slide before, but wanted to show it one more time to show how important this is. This is what the property taxes, almost every city uses the property tax revenue for.
And I might interject here too. I know it's true here, and it is true in a lot of communities in different parts of the country, that COVID has had sort of an adverse effect on school populations. A lot of people have pulled their kids out of schools and they're homeschooling and this sort of thing. The only way to replace that is either get rid of COVID, which doesn't look likely at this point, or increase your population. Well, one thing that when we look at this project, one thing that we feel pretty sure of is there will be an increase in the population for Lone Oak, which most of those people coming here are going to have children. And I think you'll see the population in your classrooms go up, which really have a far-reaching effect into the amount of tax dollars that you get for your school. So there's a plus there that's sort of hidden that you don't normally think about, but that is a direct impact to the schools when you start increasing the population of kids going to those schools.
Mm-hmm. Next slide, please. So there's a property tax estimator online that you can go to, and you can look up the city of Lone Oak. So Becknell, I said, was 1.2 million square foot. Depending on what the county appraiser would appraise the value for, it's a $70 to $80 million project. Let's say they appraised it for $50 million. That's an estimated annual property tax to the city of Lone Oak for $290,000. That's an annual tax. Now, you've probably also read, you know, Amazon got some tax concessions from the city of North Little Rock. I think the AEDC kicked in a little help with them on infrastructure. The governor had some quick action funds. But even if there's some cutting of that, you can just see that's just one of these. If you had 3 or 4 of these, you know, you could be approaching $1 million additional property tax revenue, which just think what that would do for parks, schools, fire, police, the whole town. So one thing you might say, well, what do you guys have to do with it? So Dave and I have the property under contract. And so we went out and we hired a national firm to say, we want to do an industrial park here, help us find some people. So we've talked to 3 or 4 now, but in literally a matter of 3 months, we found these two companies. So our job is to get a contract, get these people under contract, then work with the city, work with hopefully the state, work with the governor on getting all the necessary infrastructure that they need to make this project reality. So what we would in effect do is we would turn around and sell these parcels to these groups. Dave and I probably would personally do the residential part of it because we've done 2 or 3 of those. So that's kind of what our proposal is, kind of an update, and we'd love to open it up to the public and council members and answer any questions if we can.
This is Gib Richardson. I'd be interested in hearing about potential more residential stuff out in that area. Is there a bigger vision, or maybe even some retail stuff along Highway 89 north and south?
Wow, great question. Could you go back that slide, Mayor?
Yeah, Gene, I'm gonna have you take off of mute, and that way you guys have one microphone in the room.
Right there. Oh, go back one. Right there. So one thing we would propose is on the west side of 89, where that little rectangle is, you put your cursor down there. We're proposing, going from there up, strip along there being commercial, just maybe a couple hundred feet deep along 89, where you might have cleaners, you might have, different types of commercial buildings there, and then transition from that. Remember the one I showed you in Sherwood where we had like a car dealership and a restaurant, and then it transitioned to the single family and multifamily. So if you go back up to the one above that, I think there. Yeah. Or no, the ones with the
green lines on them.
The green lines. There you go. So Dave, you want to talk about those on the top there along?
Yeah. When the previous owners did the development, or the Lucas, I don't know if it's Bar J or Lucas, but they put in the infrastructure, water and sewer, for these, what I would call townhomes. That's a little line of homes on the very northern part of that section that borders on Mallard Point Drive. That would be probably our first, that's the low hanging fruit, that it's ready to go. All we have to do is probably run a road down on the south side of that, and we could double that production of those lots, and we'd have, I think, about 35 units going in right there. If you go on down further and you see where they had the second, you can see the homes and lots that are in there now, but just to the east of that, you can see where there was a proposal for another leg, for lack of a better term, of residential houses. We would move that whole thing to the west, because this whole area outside of the residential houses that are there now is actually zoned industrial. Well, there's no need to have industrial space between the houses in this subdivision. We would try to move the eastern leg closer to the part that's already developed. Then we have a couple of proposals or ideas on where we could have ingress and egress to this new development. Along with the old railroad track that was talked about earlier for the walking path, that's a 200-foot wide strip of property that we might be able to negotiate to put a road in there. Like Doug indicated earlier, you could come off of 3rd Street and sort of loop a road back into the development there, or you could come down on that northeast corner and put something in there that would tie in with those townhomes up there.
One of the, you asked about the residential. We think everything east of the homes that are there now should be residential with the exception of the commercial strip just west of 89, just like Dave was saying. That would be, you're talking a lot of homes in there if we could develop that out.
Sir, what about the area to the west that it doesn't look like there's any vision for that? Is that not suitable for development? Yes,
Well,
sir.
that is zoned industrial, and our plan is that if we do the residential and it's successful, we would just move to the west. But until we really get an idea of how this development might go, this residential development, we probably wouldn't do anything over there until we get a feel for what's going on the east part of that, east of the existing homes there. The
Yes,
other
sir.
thing that we've talked about is up on the north hard corner there at 89 and 40. We've talked to a Big Red convenience store operation that is very interested in that site. We haven't gotten any further than just an interest level, but they have expressed an interest in going in there.
Hey, Doug and Dave, can you guys talk about how the wet and dry county influence what you guys do and who you're able to attract to certain areas and what that might mean for the city of Lone Oak if we happen to be able to sell alcohol?
I will tell you, I got about a week and a half ago, I talked to Quick Trip. Now, Quick Trip is real active over, QT. Yeah, it's called Quick Trip, but QT. They're really on a pretty aggressive growth pattern over in Little Rock. They've got one going out in Southwest Little Rock across from where
Bass Pro
is, and then they've got another one in Morgan on the east side of town. So off of 365. So I called the guy that's over the Arkansas division, and I just introduced myself and I said, hey, you know, we've got some development property over in Lone Oak. Would you be interested in any of that? He said, you know, it's funny you asked. He said, we have Lone Oak as a target market for where we want to go. He said, the only problem with Lone Oak, we would be there now if we could sell beer. That's a big part, beer and wine. That's a big part of their sales. And I said, well, I don't know. I know it's a dry county. I don't know any of the history on how it came or what the chances of changing or anything are, but it is dry right now. He said, well, we understand that. We might want to buy some property and hold it, thinking that they might change, or we might be able to come in there and make it make sense without beer and wine. But again, that's on the northern part of the property, north side of 40. So it is a factor.
And we also Big Red store that you mentioned, they partner. You've probably seen Big Red stores, but they're very nice convenience stores, and they typically work with a Wendy's, a Popeyes, or a McDonald's. And they came out, visited the site. We met with them, and they also said they would look at it in the future potentially if it wasn't dry. Beer and wine is a pretty good portion of their sales.
But back to your question on the west side, we really don't have we haven't thought much about what we would do over there at this point.
Thank you. How about north of I-40, that whole strip?
So if you've driven down Galloway recently, you've seen some of the new businesses. There's a new, actually a big new warehouse development going there. It's going to look really nice. Colliers is doing it. Utility trailer, Camping World, and metal building manufacturer. All attractive businesses. All of course need utilities. But we envision something along that line going across on the north side of 40.
You know, you could break those up into 3 to 5, 6, 7 acre lots and would work perfectly for what Doug just described for a lot of those businesses that are over there. I know that new home metal builder, metal home, building guy going in there. What's the name of that place that Jason's doing?
Yeah.
Anyway, they're on 3 acres. So that's what we sort of envision over there, especially to the west of the on and off ramp.
Thank you. Is there anything in the vision south of these 2 big industrial buildings? It looks like there's some blank space there north of the I guess that's Mallard Point Road.
On the first building where that's furthest to the west, that would be where Lowe's is going. Becknell has added to their contract an additional 45 acres for, they're just speculating that they would need it.
Mayor, could you draw a line from north to south between 1 and 2, going from the interstate down to Mallard Point Drive, all the way down? That is what Becknell is proposing to purchase, that 145 acres.
And the southern 40 acres is for that's speculation on, they think they'll have somebody else go in there, but they don't know who yet. They don't need the full 145 for Lowe's. Could be light manufacturing.
Could be like a Remington, a Maybelline, something like
Yeah.
that, L'Oreal.
And then where the building number 2 is actually, that's about 120 acres that we have available. And then if you go where 3 is and you go all the way up to 40, that's where the 215 acre parcel is. Right.
Yep, there it is.
So that's the way that's what we have on the board right now. And we have an LOI and a contract coming from Becknell on 1, and it's all contingent on them getting the Lowe's deal at this point. And we have a contract that we received today on 3, plus everything north of that up to 40.
Okay, thank you. Last question. Yeah, elaborate one more time about that rail bed down there on the south side, please.
Well, that just came up a week or so ago. We were looking at trying to develop points of ingress and egress that works well, not only for the tenants in the development, but I know the fire marshal's going to have input into how we allow his vehicles to get in and out. And when you start looking at traffic congestion and different things, we think that as this develops, we're probably going to need to have a plan for increased ingress and egress. So when I talked to Roger Davenport, actually told me about that, I looked into that, and it's a possibility. Nothing is firm on the deal. Nothing that's been signed, or we haven't really even looked at it that closely. It's just a possibility at this point.
Thank you all. I don't have any more questions.
Well, thank you.
Would there be a time? Sorry. Go ahead.
Miss Suzette, go ahead.
Yes, okay, thank you. I'm Suzette Elmore, and I've been involved in real estate for about 20 years now. I've heard great things about both of you. Just want to let you know that.
Thank
I
you.
understand you've been very successful in the history of your business. And I know you had a great time working with Mayor Joe Smith in North Little Rock. So, yeah, great partner there. So I've got a couple of questions. Do you have any plans of multifamily or maybe patio homes? And then another question would be, I'm guessing there is not a plan to recreate the golf course or anything of that fashion on that that previous course.
So on your first question, there's a new phenomena that's going all across the South, and it's called build to rent, and they're duplexes, but they don't look like duplexes. They look like a single family home, but they're literally putting in thousands of these, and they look beautiful. And we can send some pictures of them. But we've actually already got a couple examples that we can share with the mayor or with Dean. So we do have an idea of what they would look like. But again, it would be a mixture of multifamily with single family homes, but they would complement each other. No, we have no plans for HUD housing, low income housing. This would all be market rate project.
Okay, and no vision to do anything with the golf course as far as reestablishing it?
Well, Dave and I used to own a golf driving range, and the 3 or 4 months of summer it would make money, and the other 7 or 8 months it lost money. And I used to actually sell equipment to golf courses, and that's a tough business. It's a very tough business. Even you go out to Chenal doesn't get enough revenue to support the golf course. They have so many homes out there, and they have a tax associated with it to maintain the golf course. So, unfortunately, I just don't see it possible to bring that golf course back. I'd love to, but I just don't see it possible.
Okay, thank you.
I was wondering at what point could we, and I realize this meeting was open up to the public, but where y'all could have some drawings and some of these things on some type of poster board where we can show the public to a greater point exactly what all we're thinking out there.
Yeah, we can do that. As a matter of fact, we'd like to do that. We thought about trying to do some of that today, but we're really not far enough along in our development plans to say much. And one of the things we learned in doing this is that if we go out and say, this is where this road is going to be, and then that's not where the road goes, it creates a little bit of a problem in people's minds. So what we'd rather do is talk hypothetically like we are today. And then when we get a little further down the line where we really get some concrete plans and development plans, we'll be ready to come in and lay out some things like that for everybody to take a look at and have. We've been in several meetings with residents and different groups outlining our plans and exactly what we were planning to do. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not good. They have a tendency to take on a life of their own sometimes, but we've done that, and we'd be willing to do that and have to do that in this case once we get a little further down the road.
We've done a lot of what we would call preliminary plats, and I would call this kind of a preliminary plat. And it's funny because they kind of morph over time, but I'd hate to show the public this is our plans, and pretty much everybody knows the final plat's going to look different than the preliminary plat. But we probably could get something together in the next 30 days or so.
Sure, I certainly respect that. The second question I had, and this is perhaps even more of a hypothetical, we do have some money for economic development, and this is certainly would be the biggest project we've taken on as a city in our life. What type of commitment would y'all expect? And Gene, you may want to jump in on here, of the 1.5 roughly that we have, 1.6, what type of commitment of that would you think we should expect to devote to this project? And I realize we're hopefully going to get money from other sources from the state and things like that as well.
Okay, that's a really good question, and one that we need to keep in mind is that the money that we get from other places that are considered matching dollars would need to be tied directly to the number of quality jobs. Boy, did you get that?
I heard the number of quality jobs and then you went silent.
We were messing with our computers here. Did you understand my answer? Is that we would need to look at the number of jobs, and we would want to try to go to the federal agencies and to the state to match every dollar that we have that could be put toward a big development like this.
Okay.
So it's hard to answer. I can just say that I wouldn't want to put all of it in. I want to put enough in, similar to what other cities and counties have had to match projects, and hold some dry powder, because you never know where we might need some to make a deal happen. And so that's my answer. Is I think it would probably be a matching dollar for infrastructure, and be a percentage of what we may match from the state and the federal government.
All right. So I guess my other question then would be, for this company that would be doing these spec buildings, obviously we're not going to know, with the lows, if that gets to happen, we have some idea of the numbers there. How would we project those numbers for those spec companies or spec buildings?
You can't. I mean, there's probably history with the company when they have built these before, what their expectations are.
Sure.
They're not just going to go build something without having some idea and some projection about what they think. But
yeah,
without having a hard number to show that we're creating good jobs, we probably shouldn't invest a public dollar toward it. And that's just, I think, how the state will view it. It's how the federal government will view it. And I think that's how we should view it.
So our guest today, what's your thought? I mean, I'm like you, no one's going to build a building the size they're wanting to build without having some idea of the tenant that they're going to house. Is that a correct assumption? And that may be more of a question for our guest.
Was your question that no one would build this without having a proposed tenant in mind? Was that your question?
I mean, that would be my expectation, that they don't have at least some idea of the type of tenant they're going to have in mind.
Well, we talked to them about that, and they truly have the philosophy of build it and they will come.
Okay.
And quite frankly, these guys are building 1 million to 2 million square foot facilities. And he goes, well, we probably just start the first one with 500,000. Like, we'll do a small one.
Gotcha.
I think their history and their models have been successful, and they like this location and understand the market conditions and those types of things well enough to feel pretty comfortable to go out and build 500,000 square feet with a pretty positive level of assurance that it's going to pay off for them.
Yeah.
They were actually talking about doing 2 or 3 million square feet in total by the time they get done, is what their projection is.
But again, let there be no doubt, they aren't going to be spending 50 to 100 million unless they're guaranteed infrastructure, which includes utilities and stuff. So it's going to be a shared type project.
I have a question. My name is Alice Bridges. The presentation is wonderful, and it's very exciting to visualize this growth. What is our next step as far as the city of Lone Oak? What do we need to do?
You want to handle that?
Yeah, I think that the mayor has already talked to Jack Bond, and he's asked him, hey, could you do a survey? Could you do an assessment of what it's going to take to bring our existing utilities to these projected sites out here? Okay. And I think that's what we really need to do is get prepared to be able to show people this is what we need to do, and this is how much it's going to cost.
To be more
And that's,
clear on
I
that,
think a good person to ask is the engineer who's most familiar with it. There may be other ways to get that information, but I think we've already started down that pathway to ask him. And the thing that I would say is that we would probably want to compensate him with funds from the Industrial Development Fund that is currently maintained at the city.
Gene, I'm gonna clarify that a little bit. So I did have a discussion with Jack, and what I asked him to do was put together a proposal for what you might consider a capacity study, so that we can not just, or let me say it this way, beyond Doug and Dave's vision, as other people start looking at this site or the sites around it as potential expansion.
I would go Trace talk to him. Are you? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I am.
So, sorry, back on track. The capacity study is what I asked Jack to do, not for us, but to put together a proposal that I could bring before the city council in February. And so I was actually going to ask Doug and Dave if they could just quickly speak to maybe the importance of a city having an industrial site study, or as it was put to me this week, a capacity study, which then we would be able to make better decisions as a council. What size, in terms of responding to a client or a proposal, we could say, well, maybe they need a X number of size gas line. Well, we can't do that. We've already had a study that says we can't push this much gas or gallons per minute, or fire suppression issues, or traffic studies, or whatever goes on inside of that. The engineer puts forward in that report. We then would be able to arm Gene with much more fodder than he's had previously to respond to these RFIs that you've heard him and experienced him bringing into the conversation in the past.
That's a good point. And these companies, when they're looking at sites, they expect to have those studies. They expect to say, this is what our requirements are. Can you meet them? Yes or no? And it puts the city at a disadvantage to not be able to answer those questions on a timely basis, because a lot of times the Lowe's or Tractor Supply, they won't wait. And if they can't get those answers, they might potentially go to a different site.
So this is something that's already in the works as far as the capacity study that would make the properties more attractive.
No, ma'am. Well, I guess when you say if it's in the works, what I asked Jack to do was put together a proposal that I could bring to the city council. And he's given me a price. He's given me a generic timeline of how long it would take him to put it together. And so that's what I'll be doing in February. I'll be asking the city council to move on asking Jack Bond to conduct a capacity study or an industrial site study for us, so that we would have a report so that Gene could use in these types of conversations. And Doug and Dave are, in similar fashion, like he's already said, another developer may show up separate to this project in the next few years. And they're going to ask those exact same questions that Doug and Dave have been asking. What can we get out there? How much is it going to cost? What can the site hold? All these things that go into preparation, okay, of being competitive and being able to get, I'll just say, a product to the market much quicker than another city can.
Okay, I have a couple of more questions for Doug and Dave. So have you actually closed on any of these properties here in Lone Oak?
No, we have not. We need to make sure that we can deliver before we sign any contracts. And at this point, we're not far enough along in our due diligence to make sure that we can get the capacities that are required and the ingress and the egress that's required to meet the demands and be able to do these types of projects. I think that's what the mayor was alluding to, is that, and I was saying also, is whether we do it or somebody else comes along at some other point and wants to do a development on this site, those types of questions have to be asked and answered, because we don't know if we did this residential subdivision like we talked about, and we did just the bit that we're talking about on these buildings up in that northern part, we don't know if the sewer system can handle it, if the water system could handle it. What do we do for fire protection? What about ingress and egress? I mean, there are a lot of questions that we don't have the answers to yet. So for somebody to submit a contract to us and say, okay, we're going to go make a proposal to Lowe's to do this building for them, we need to make sure that you can deliver what we're promising to Lowe's. We can't do that yet, you know, and we wouldn't step out and try to tell these guys, yeah, we can do it, when we don't know whether we can or not. We don't know what it's going to take to get adequate fire supply, fire protection there at this point. And now I think that's what the mayor is talking about with Jack Bond, is to do a study that tells you where this is going to come from. How are you going to meet these demands for this industrial park? If this is ever going to be an industrial park, all of those questions are going to have to be answered.
But Suzette, to answer your question a little bit different way, is we have options on the property. And so that option gives us time to work through these issues that Dave just mentioned. So we all have our fingers crossed that this is going to work out.
Absolutely. And so I'm just assuming that you've got these contingencies to give you time to do all of your feasibility studies. And as we know in commercial development, sometimes that can take years, you know, before you can close on a property to get all of these studies done. But I'm just assuming that you're just starting with, you've got these kind of numbered in your head, that you're starting on or looking mainly at 2 projects, and that if you can get those commitments from those industries, then at that point get all the questions answered, the feasibility studies done, then at that point you're comfortable with closing on the property and moving forward with this third party or this industry, correct?
Absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Hey, Dave, Doug, I got a bigger picture question for you. You guys, you know, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, before we'd met, came highly recommended. I think Mr. Daly, the previous mayor of Little Rock, I think we spoke with him, had really good things to say about you. And one of the things that he said was, these are the type of guys that will truly partner with you. And if they, you know, things are clicking and going well, they're going to turn around and invest in your community. You know, they're going to make sure you guys are successful too. And what he said was the words, you may even see them invest in downtown. Now, I'm not asking you to invest in our downtown. You know, obviously that would be fantastic. But what I would ask is, what are y'all's perspectives of the city? I mean, you guys have been looking at it differently now than you probably have previously. What are some goods and bads? What are some things that, you know, outside the scope of what you guys are looking here, we might need to be thinking about? And if you guys have any, you know, advice for the council or for me as the mayor, what are our strengths and weaknesses? Kind of just, I guess, kind of wrap that up in a synopsis of what your gut thought is of the city, the potential, the momentum, and where you would invest outside of the 1,000 acres.
So I've been a member of the Downtown Little Rock Partnership for 15 years now. And, you know, I wasn't around when downtown Little Rock was a thriving, Main Street was a thriving corridor. I moved to Little Rock in '87, and downtown Little Rock was depressing. Main Street was beyond depressed. And so for the last 15 years, we were saying, what can we do? We need historic rehabs. These buildings are falling down. There's people would come down there, especially state employees. They would work from 8 to 5 and immediately go home. They might eat lunch there. We said what we need was a catalyst. And what we got was Dave and I bought the building at 3rd and Main and did that rehab. And then the city got a grant to redo part of Main Street. It was a EPA grant, which was kind of strange, but it was a $2 million grant. We spent $4 million. All of a sudden, another developer said, well, we're going to rehab the Man on Main, which was a $15 million project. And all of a sudden, Main Street went from being depressed to one of the hottest areas in the city of Little Rock. So if you ask me, what can you do? The the most important thing you could do is have a catalyst. Now, would this project be a catalyst? Obviously, bringing this type of jobs, bringing this type of revenue in, absolutely. I mean, you got the Grumpy Rabbit, which, I mean, we've eaten there several times. It's fabulous. And people in Little Rock talk about it. You know, if you can get that ball rolling, get that downtown, get some excitement created. And yeah, I mean, bike trails, walking trails, I mean, it's extremely important. If you don't think so, talk to the mayor of North Little Rock, talk to Little Rock, talk to the Waltons up in Northwest Arkansas. I mean, it brings in huge revenues and creates excitement. So to answer your question, I think you need a catalyst and some excitement.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hey, yeah, this is Michael Florence. I just wanted to comment that this is it's really exciting. That's what we passed that LIDC tax for. It's what the private LIDC put money into that interchange to come in. So it's exciting. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us and allowing us this opportunity. We look forward to moving forward to this, and we're excited about it and feel really positive about it.
Before we close out or kind of get to a conclusion, I do want to give the floor to our city planner, who's probably got probably more perspective than all of the others of us in this room right now in terms of seeing development across the state of Arkansas and working with other cities. And so he comes highly tenured. And Jimmy, if you would, if I can put you on the spot briefly, would you just give us your two thoughts on all of this and maybe leave the council with some perspective for the next steps?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, very exciting. A lot of information here, and it would take me a while to digest it all. I would just say that it's some very great ideas proposed, and I think it's some good things that could happen to the city of Lonoke. I would advise on one thing that I feel a little more comfortable about, and that is what I would call a demand capacity study for the utilities. And if this wonderful group was not presenting tonight and nothing had even been talked about in this property, I think the city is already far behind in getting an idea of what it would take for utilities to develop that property and however it's developed. And my recommendation would be to move on that just as quickly as possible and determine what opportunities there are for utilities, what the costs would be, and what any obstacles would be. This property is as far as you can get from the base of utilities in Lonoke. And my past experiences, even with the work that's been done in the last few years, there could be some obstacles when you start furnishing sewers for water and sewer for an area as this might develop. There may be some pitfalls in between this property and the wastewater treatment facility, for example, that we haven't even thought about yet. So I guess my one thought would be, in terms of something to move forward with, is to get on this utility situation as quickly as possible and have those answers for these gentlemen as well as anyone else that might want to develop out there.
Thanks, Jimmy. All right, any closing shots or points of discussion from the council? Any last questions before we say goodbye here?
I would just like to let them know how much we appreciate their interest to Dave and Doug in Lonoke. This has been a vision for a long time. And I just want you to know that the city council is on board with you, I feel, to help you in any way that we can, to help in this development. We would love to see this in our lifetime. I've been saying that for many years. And, but with the history that the two of you have and the success that I've heard Byron McKimmey talk about, your success, that we just appreciate the two of you as investors and as brokers in real estate to have this interest in Lono, because we've always thought we were going to be the next big thing. And so this kind of puts it on the map, and we wish you well in your endeavors with these industries, and just let you know that we are here to help in any way we can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I echo that. And Gene, thank you too. I know you and the mayor have worked tons of hours to get us where we are now. And let's just do whatever we need to do to get it to the finish line.
Yeah, Coy, I agree. And really like how Suzette said that. Thank you, Suzette.
All right, guys,
Yeah,
we're gonna
I agree also.
I'm gonna go ahead and we'll go ahead and close up tonight. Personally, thanks Doug and Dave. I appreciate you guys coming in. And I guess I want to leave the public with you know, a mention of being at ease, because your feedback will be requested at some point, if not from Doug and Dave, which I believe it will be from the council. And so I want the community to know that we're in this together. This is, you know, this is not a rogue movement by private development. This is a partnership, and this is what it should look like. And I believe that we put in the work, we put in a lot of preparation, and we're being met with opportunity, and that's where success is going to be found. And so there are folks who may feel uneasy about this, and the only way we're going to get to where we need to be is to talk through some of these things. And so I just want to again encourage the public to take note, get informed, stay informed, and put to rest rumors, conjecture, and be a part of a conversation that's going to be meaningful. It's going to be inclusive. So with that, I'm going to end this and say goodnight and bid you guys adieu. So thanks for participating and hanging in there for 2 hours tonight.
Thank you all very
Thanks.
much.